Hello people! Y'all are super hot for coming and checking out this video. And cool for enabling my special interests. Cause these boxes consumed my entire soul for a week. Even though they technically only took 4 hours, I spent much more time thinking about them.
Hey guys, I'm Axel. Y'all should grab a coffee. I sure as hell am. And join me for today's video. But fair warning, this is in no way a tutorial, but I'll do my best to be thorough and not go on tangents. But I make no promises.
So I thrifted these boxes. That's why they're different sizes. I like to thrift the stuff that I'm going to turn into art because there's so much waste in the textile and decor industries that like your local thrift store is full of things that you can get and you can upcycle. These boxes, specifically this Gambit one and the Rogue one, were both those cringy live, laugh, love type signs. I liked these boxes specifically because the original frames were real wood, and that means all they needed was some touch up with some black spray paint, and they were the perfect blank canvas. The actual design process of how I went from a sketch to these is a little bit more intensive. First, I did some thumbnails because I knew the general concept of I wanted Rogue to be blowing a kiss and I wanted Gambit to be holding a playing card. I just didn't know how I was going to achieve that. So thumbnails helped me kind of block out that idea because that is not enough to just jump right into paper cutting. After I had a thumbnail I liked, I went into Photoshop to start roughing up a general concept. Now, photo bashing is probably my most controversial part of my artistic process because it involves getting a ton of different images from all over the internet and then cutting them up digitally and putting them back together. And then I trace over that in order to create my final designs. I don't do it for every project, but if I want a project to be more realistic or have better anatomy, anything like that, I do use photo bashing. But I have 2 rules to keep my photo bashes from being like actual artworks in and of themselves versus just my underpainting. Rule 1 is I have to manipulate the images in some way. I can't just take a photo verbatim and just use that. So, for example, I knew Rogue, I wanted her to be blowing a kiss, but other than that part of that photo, I really only needed the mouth. So I just cut out the mouth, used different photos for her eyes, her eyebrows, her hair. I also ended up, instead of using a cosplay photo like I had planned to rough up their outfits, I ended up just using a paintbrush tool and painting on rough concepts of what their clothing looked like. And rule 2 is to keep it very loose and low quality. I'm not looking for the best, crispest image when I'm looking for my photos. As long as it's the pose I need, the color I need, the shape I need, I will use that photo regardless of if it's teeny tiny awful quality or large, beautiful, perfect photography. I see these as underpaintings, so there's really no need to have a high quality image because I'm going to be doing my own stuff on top of it, which does kind of have the side effect of looking really uncanny and creepy when they're done. Next, I still had lots of space on the sketchbook pages where I had done my thumbnails, so I decided to print out my photo bashes and transfer them into my sketchbook and did my pencil sketching by hand. I like doing my thumbnails and my sketches like this in an actual sketchbook because it helps me stay loose with my mark making and makes me more committed and careful with the marks that I actually do make. When I'm working digitally, I am a huge fan of the undo button, which makes things take 10 times longer. The last little bit of prep I needed to do was the Illustrator files. So I might have carpal tunnel, and the issue with that in cutting paper is I am a right hand dominant person and I can't really cut stuff out anymore with my right hand. I did in the past and I still do if I'm working from original pieces to make shadow boxes, But for these guys, they're layered paper, so I used a silhouette machine to cut out all of the pieces. And in Illustrator, each of these shapes that I'm making are going to be their own individual layer on the final box. So it's really important that lines of pieces that stack on top of each other line up correctly. And I achieved this by copying and pasting shapes and then deleting and adding anchor points as needed. Once I had the Illustrator files blocked out, I put them onto a second Illustrator file to block out which shapes needed to be cut out with which colors so that I could start planning what papers I needed to get. I try to have as minimal waste as possible in the projects that I do, so I don't normally get a lot of extra paper, so my margin for error is teeny tiny. After I have this layout done, I go artboard by artboard, cutting it out on my machine. After each piece was cut out, I organized them into two piles. One pile was for Rogue, and the other pile was for Gambit, since I didn't want to mix up pieces, and also there are some pieces like her lips or their eyebrows that are really tiny. I also did not want to lose those, because cutting out more pieces would be a pain. Before I even started putting pieces together, I wanted to embellish them a little bit with colored pencil, add a little texture, add a little bit more dimension. And then as I did those pieces, I started from the bottom layer, moving up, and assembled it as I went. Now, assembling it as I go is not something I normally do, but for future projects, I definitely will be doing it because it just felt like it made the project faster. And I also had a better plan in my head of, oh, I already did this to this piece, so I need to do this to this piece so that matches or complements it in some way. Rogue and Gambit's hair pieces took the longest, especially Rogue's, because she's about 4 or 5 layers of hair. Because even with being so many pieces deep, I still wanted a little bit more depth. So I used a colored pencil, separated out larger chunks of hair, and then went in everywhere those pieces connected and darkened it up a little bit. Now, I did all that, and then I was like, okay, they're all done, time to put them in the box. And I picked them up, looked over at the boxes, and then realized I had just still had only the spray painted black box. But the thing about that is I knew from my thumbnail sketching phase and my photo bashing phase that I wanted to line the inside of the box with cards. I had not done that yet. I probably should have done that first, but oh well. So I quickly tried to do that, which was a mistake because as I was trying to glue down cards, as I glued down more, other cards would start to lift up and peel. So doing it quickly and putting them right into the box was not an option. I had to glue all the cards down, put some heavy stuff on top of them, and then let them sit for a little bit. I waited about 24 hours to really make sure they were flat before I took the heavy objects off, and then used many adhesive dots to put Rogue and Gambit into the boxes. I didn't count how many dots I actually used. I probably should have, but I'm still finding the backings to these dots to this day, and it's been 2 weeks since I made these. Anyways, thanks for watching. Y'all are super cool dudes for that. If you like this video, make sure you hit that like button. If you have any more questions about how I made these boxes, comment them down below. And if you liked these and want to see what other crazy shit I get up to, then follow me for more and check out my other socials linked in the description below. See ya!